Well, I want to introduce to you an extraordinary person. This person set up a company. He made sure that that company was a not-for-profits company, so he does not become a millionaire or a billionaire as a result of setting it up. He got together a handful of people and he basically said to the world, let's create a global encyclopedia. And you, the world, you help me edit that encyclopedia. It'll be a free encyclopedia. It'll be on the internet. And it'll be a fantastic tool that people can use in universities and schools, but it's that anybody can tap into. And over the last few years, Wikipedia has emerged as one of the most important internet sites in the world. And I suspect it's just the beginning. The whole concept of Wikipedia, the whole concept of people around the world contributing and helping edit for free such an incredible encyclopedia has been a brilliant one. So what I want you to do is introduce you to Jimmy Wales. And I've had the privilege of spending time with him and meeting with him and listening to him and learning from him. And I'm sure you will do the same. Thank you.
So I'm just going to start off today. I'm going to tell you about Wikipedia. I'm also going to speak a lot about my new project, the current project I'm working on. And I'm also just going to talk in general about free culture and its importance and some of the things that I think are critical values that we should respect and address as we're working in this area. So in 1962, Charles Van Doren, who was later a senior editor at Britannica, said the ideal encyclopedia should be radical. It should stop being safe. But if you know anything about the history of Britannica since 1962, it's been anything but radical. It's still a very safe, stodgy, old-fashioned encyclopedia. Well, Wikipedia, on the other hand, begins with a very radical idea. And the idea is for all of us to imagine a world in which every single person on the planet is given free access to the sum of all human knowledge. And that's what we're doing. So every element of that vision statement is quite important to me. And I'm going to talk throughout my talk about different pieces of that so you can understand a little bit more about where I'm coming from. So first of all, what is Wikipedia? So I assume, has everybody in the room used Wikipedia? Everybody who's used Wikipedia? Yay. How many people have actually edited Wikipedia? Oh, that's pretty good. Pretty good. The rest of you are a little bit lazy and need to help us out, but that's not a bad proportion. So what Wikipedia is a freely licensed encyclopedia written by thousands of volunteers in many languages. And it's really important, a lot of people who have just used Wikipedia may not really get that. It's really important that Wikipedia is freely licensed, and it's really important that it's written by thousands of volunteers in many languages. So what is the Wikimedia Foundation? The Wikimedia Foundation is the nonprofit organization that I founded. It owns Wikipedia and operates the website. The current chair of the board is Florence Devoard, who is a French woman. On our board, we have now just over half of the board members are Europeans. We're probably going to be expanding the board sometime this year. We're not sure yet. And we would like to have a very diverse board with people representing different parts of the globe. Right now it's all American and European, but we want to expand beyond that. And the Wikimedia Foundation is responsible for Wikipedia and all of its sister projects. And we're a really tiny nonprofit organization, all things considered. We spent around $1 million U.S. last year, and we'll spend around $2 to $3 million this year. There are only 7 full-time positions at the foundation. Everybody else, including me, we're all volunteers. And we've yet become one of the top 10 websites on the internet with such a tiny budget, which is a fairly remarkable fact. We're supported primarily by small donations from people all over the world. The typical kind of donation that has made up the bulk of our revenue over the years has been $50 to $100, €50 to €100, mostly from the U.S. and Europe, with a significant chunk from Japan. But we had donations last year from over 50 nations, so people giving whatever they can from all over the world. Having small donations has been actually quite wonderful for us, because as a community project, it's allowed us to really feel quite safe and strong in our independence. In other words, we're not dependent on any one large donor or anything like that. We've had an offer from a major internet company to host everything and to basically manage the servers and the software and all that. But we turned that down, and we turned it down because we felt that it would compromise our independence. We're able to survive the way we are, and so we just want to keep doing that. We do partner with some institutions to keep Wikipedia fast for people. So, for example, Kennisnet is a Dutch educational consortium who provides us the use of some servers in Amsterdam. Yahoo provides some servers in South Korea. These are basically just caching servers to allow for faster page loading times around the world. So what is Wikia? Wikia is my new project. It's a completely separate organization. And the real vision of Wikia is to say, we see that the encyclopedia project is working. We see that this is a viable means of bringing people together. And we want to expand the idea to every other kind of book, work, or community that people want to build. So we're basically offering an open platform and community support to let people do all kinds of different things. We're extending the Wikipedia model beyond just nonprofit educational and research communities. It's my belief that we are at the beginning of a more broad media revolution, and that it doesn't all have to be purely about education and charity, that it's all kinds of things that people might want to do. It's a new form of culture. Even so, everything at Wikia is freely licensed, so we use GPL software, open source software. We use free documentation license content. We also have an enormous amount of Creative Commons content. Some of our wikis are actually completely under Creative Commons licenses. And so far, we've been really quite successful. This is a graph showing the growth of Wikipedia going back and looking at 2002, 2003, and then laying on top of that the growth of Wikia in 2005, 2006. And as you can see, we're on the same kind of trajectory, maybe a little bit faster growth, but of course, a lot more people know about wikis now, so that's a little bit easier to achieve. The idea here is that an encyclopedia is a very big work, but a library is much bigger. So we're trying to extend this into all kinds of things. Just to give you a couple of examples of the kinds of things that people are doing. At World Wikia, this is a travel site, and people are writing travel guides there. So if you can imagine an encyclopedia article about Cape Town would be very, very different from a travel guide to Cape Town. The things that you want to know as a tourist, the kinds of things to be discussed, are different from what you're looking for in an encyclopedia article. And so some people want to come together and write travel guides, and this is a place where they can do that. We also have a lot of really fun projects. One of my favorite is the Muppets Wiki. So just to give you an idea of what kind of thing is going on here, in Wikipedia, there are around 300 different articles about the Muppets, if you can imagine such a thing. So we've got Jim Henson, Sesame Street, Muppet Show, Muppet Movie, Kermit, Big Bird, so on and on, Miss Piggy. And you would think that 300 articles about the Muppets would be enough for anybody. But at the Muppet Wiki, they have written 12,320 articles about the Muppets. I find this to be quite remarkable and quite interesting. They've done this since December 5th, 2005, which is when they started. So it's been now just a little bit more than a year. And actually, this slide is a little bit old. They're up over 13 or 14,000 now, and expect to be over 20,000 by the end of the year. So what are they writing about? How can people, what on earth is going on there? Well, just to give you some idea, this is the Wikipedia article on the famous violinist Itzhak Perlman. Like any good Wikipedia article, it tells you the story of his life. It tells you his biography. It tells you about his career as a violinist, different awards that he's won, different things that he's produced. For some unknown reason, though, this article completely omits any mention of the time he came on Sesame Street and played his violin like a banjo. But this is the only thing that the Muppet community cares about. They aren't trying to write a general interest encyclopedia. They basically want to write about the Muppets and document in unbelievable detail the entire world, but from the perspective of the Muppets. It's really an amazing thing. And if you look at the if you go to a bookstore and you look for unauthorized guides or authorized guides to the Muppets, there's been nothing that even comes remotely close to this. Traditional publishing models have absolutely no means to support this kind of culture. You cannot possibly package this up and sell it for what it would cost to pay people to write it. The only way that these kinds of things can be produced is through people who are really passionate about the topic, taking the time to come together as a community to do it. It needs to be done as a community. No one person could assemble all of this knowledge about the Muppets. So this has been something that's been really quite important over the time that we've been on the internet, that people are coming together and beginning to produce all kinds of different things. So at Wikia, we have several different initiatives. We have the Wikia communities. In addition to, I just gave you two examples, but we have humor sites. We have Uncyclopedia, which is a parody of Wikipedia, which is hysterically funny. We have political advocacy sites. We have health advocacy and support sites. One site is on pet diabetes. So fairly obscure topic, but if your pet has diabetes, I guess it's quite important to you that you would come together with another group of people to find out what you can do to help and sort out the information in a healthy, positive way. We also have the Open Serving Initiative, which we're just getting started on. The basic concept of open serving is that we want to give free hosting to anybody who's working in free software and free content. And we're even going to let people keep the ad revenue if they want. We have no business model for this whatsoever. We have no idea how we could ever make money from doing this. But we know just from looking at Wikipedia that as long as what people are doing is primarily text, the actual hosting cost is quite small. We don't expect this to be a really big cost. And we are basically going to roll out many different software packages for people to use over the next couple of years. In general, the basic idea here is that in the early days of free software, open source software, people thought, well, this is great and interesting and kind of fun for people working as hobbyists, but there are no business models around this. How could this ever become important? And yet we've seen now, we have companies like MySQL, Red Hat. These are successful companies who are working in the free software space using business models that are other than the traditional model of packaging up and selling proprietary software. I believe that in the future we're going to find all kinds of interesting new business models around freely licensed community-produced content. Some of that may be advertising supported. Some of it may be other things that we haven't even thought of yet. And I think that in general, Wikia's general business model and the entire industry of free content will be served by basically me feeding what I can into this and making it viable. The next project is Wikia Search. This is our search engine project, which has gotten an enormous amount of attention. This is one of the more interesting magazine covers that we've gotten. It's a picture of me, and it says Google's worst nightmare. I'm not really sure if that's true or not. I think they don't lose much sleep over what I'm doing, but the basic idea, the reason this is that I'm called Google's worst nightmare is that we want to create a completely transparent search engine with freely licensed software. We publish all the algorithms, a very strong component of community support, building on the lessons that I've learned in building Wikipedia about how to get large groups of people working together to produce something of value. And if this is successful, what we're going to see is certainly we won't see Wikia become a dominant search player with 60% of the market. That would be hard to do when you give away all of your software, right? On the other hand, what we will see potentially is a radical shift of the structure of the search industry. If good quality search results can be made into a commodity so that any medium to large size organization, such as a newspaper, for example, or anyone with a good website, could roll out on their site their own custom search engine that would be of good quality, this would take away a lot of the power from Google and Yahoo. People wouldn't have to go to them to find things. They could find things ubiquitously from wherever they happen to be on the internet through many, many different players. I don't know if we'll be successful or not, but I always try to do whatever seems like the most fun thing to do. And I can tell you without any reservations that taking on Britannica and ending up with maybe 1,000 times their traffic was pretty fun. So I don't know if we can take on Google with a small band of people, but what the hell, let's try. So at search.wikia.com, it's right now it's just a wiki. We've got a group of people coming together. We've just hired a very important open source developer, and I was threatened with beatings if I announced who it is today because they want to do a proper announcement. But in the next few days, we'll be announcing the technologists who will be leading the project, and that's pretty exciting. This is more or less what it's going to look like. Of course, that's not the correct logo or anything else, but I put this up because people are wondering if I'm talking about some kind of radical new interface. At least right now, we're just contemplating, in terms of the user friendliness, it should work exactly like we've become accustomed to. There's a little box, and you type in some words, and you hit search, and you find what you're looking for. But we're, of course, open to radical new ideas. This is one of the beauties of having a free software project is that people can take our code, do some cool experimentation, and if they build something cool, then everyone will benefit from it. So what is free access? So I talk a lot about free access to the sum of all human knowledge, and that I think that's important. And what I mean is free in the sense of GNU. This is in the sense outlined by Richard Stallman many years ago, the 4 freedoms of free software. One of the old sayings that we have in the free software movement is free as in speech, not free as in beer. So what's important about our work is not just that you can go to the website and you get it as if we're handing out free beer, and that's wonderful and everybody's excited because who wouldn't want free beer? Instead, it's freedom of speech. So the idea is for all of our work, you have the freedom to copy it. You can modify it. You can redistribute it. And you can even redistribute modified versions. And you can do all of these things commercially or non-commercially. So all of the people who are working in Wikipedia, all the people who are sharing their knowledge there are doing so with the awareness that their work can be copied by other people and redistributed and changed and altered. And that's really an exciting thing, that we are creating a cultural commons, a huge body of information and text that people may adapt and remix for all kinds of different purposes. I always talk as well about every single person on the planet. What does this mean? This means that the Wikipedia project is inherently global. So although we have more than 1.5 million articles in English, which is quite a bit, this is actually less than 1/3 of the total work. We have 11 other languages that have at least 100,000 articles. We have more than 100 and, I'm a slide ahead of you. We have 54 languages that have at least 10,000 articles, and we have more than 128 languages with at least 1,000 entries. 1,000 articles doesn't make for very much of an encyclopedia. That's a fairly small Wikipedia. But that's the number that I always look at as the number where I consider a community to be fully launched. We have at least 100 more languages beyond that that have maybe 50 or 100 articles. Some of them only have 5 or 6. Some of them, the only thing that's been accomplished so far is the interface being translated. Somebody told me that the interface is completely translated now into about 180 languages. So the software is in that many languages. But at this level, when you've got 1,000 articles, that usually means you've got 5 to 10 regular users, people who are coming in nearly daily. They've gotten to know each other. They've formed a small community. And this is when they start thinking about how can we reach out? How can we bring more people into the project? And that's when it really is sustainable. That's when it really is good. Sometimes you'll have a project. One example of a project that I was concerned about for quite some time was Swahili. In Swahili, Wikipedia, the first 75 articles at least were all written by one guy. DeSanjo lives in North Carolina in the United States, and he saw that we didn't have Swahili, so he started plugging away at it, and it was a very, very lonely job. He started writing and writing and writing. Every night he would come home from work and write some more in Wikipedia. He would blog about it and try to contact people. Slowly but surely he got enough content that it was kind of fun for people to come in. More and more people started coming in. It became social. They started having fun doing it. I don't know the exact number of articles today in Swahili Wikipedia, but it's around 1,500 the last I checked. Well, what's more important than that 1,500 number is the fact that it's been growing about 10% per month. So at that kind of growth rate, it will be a little while still, but in 3 or 4 years in Swahili there will be a substantial encyclopedia. That's just one of the languages of Africa. We're seeing a lot of the languages of India have been through that same process. Bengali has nearly 20,000 articles now, and it is growing very, very quickly. I've been to India 3 times in the last 9 months, and it's really exciting to go there because groups of people have come together there, and it's become a social movement. It's maybe not a large number of people, but we had a wiki camp in Chennai, and about 300 people showed up. It's enough that people are starting to make friends, and it's a social process. This morning I toured, it was quite remarkable actually. I went to Bush Radio and I toured, and this is a community radio station here. And the guy in charge there says something I thought was quite interesting to me as it applies to my work. He said community radio is 90% community and 10% radio. And I always talk about how Wikipedia, people always report on it in the media as if it's a technology story. But Wikipedia is 90% community and only 10% technology. The technology is just there to enable all these people to come together, make friends, and try to do something useful for the world. So it's pretty amazing that this is going on everywhere simultaneously. So how are we doing in total globally? In my keynote address at Wikimania, which is our annual conference in 2005, 2 years ago, I was in Frankfurt, Germany, and we had our conference there, and then last year in Harvard. This year we'll be in Taipei, in Taiwan. I formalized the goal of Wikipedia, and I said, I want us to have 250,000 articles in every language spoken natively by at least 1 million people. The reason I needed to do this is people were always asking me, I say a free encyclopedia for every single person on the planet in their own language. Well, the truth is there are some languages that are now only spoken by a few hundred or few thousand people. These languages are probably dying out, but may be saved in some fashion. And obviously it's going to be quite difficult to have a comprehensive encyclopedia in those languages. We would like to, but that's probably not possible. But this, to me, seems like a very achievable goal. Although it turns out there are about 347 languages which fit that description. There are a lot of languages out there with only a couple million speakers, and actually a lot of those languages are in Africa, and a lot of those languages are in cultures where the people really have very low access to technology right now. So it's going to be quite some time until we're able to do something in all of those languages, but that's my goal for the long run. Right now we have 250,000 articles or more in several languages. We have English, German, French, Polish, Japanese, and Dutch that all have 250,000 articles. So obviously for our global goals, there's still a lot of work to do. So one of the things that's always fun for us as Wikipedians is to look at how popular the website is, because it's a little bit insane that this enormous group of volunteers could come together and really kick butt on all the major internet companies. So according to Alexa, which is a website that has rankings of traffic for other websites, Wikipedia is now the 9th most popular website on the internet. We're actually the 6th most popular in Germany, which is actually, that translates to about 50% higher per capita viewership of Wikipedia in the German-speaking countries. I always joke that I'm like David Hasselhoff. He's really big in Germany. So I'm just glad that it's not the French that's so high up, because then I would have to say I'm like Jerry Lewis, because I think he's really popular in France, and I'm not sure I want to be either of those guys, but 12th most popular in India, 12th most popular in Japan, and interestingly, we are the 12th most popular website in Iran. Iran is a very interesting case to me. They aren't exactly completely friendly to freedom of speech, and certainly not completely friendly to things like encyclopedias, but it's a very popular project there. Iran has a very strong blogging culture. But one of the leaders of the Iranian Wikipedia community has been reported to the police twice. He is really a hero to me because of this. He told me don't worry too much. He said Iran has a lot of problems, but just as in any country, when crazy people call the cops sometimes just ignore them, and that's the kind of situation he's had. Nonetheless, he said, if I am arrested, because I asked him, I said, well, if you did get arrested, what should I do? Should we lay low? Should we make a big noise? And he said, make a big noise. This is what helps people in Iran. If the world community knows about them, they live. Otherwise, they may just disappear forever. And so he gave his wife my cell phone number, my office number, all these things, so that if he is taken away suddenly, we'll know we'll hear about it quickly and start to make some noise. So how many people see Wikipedia each day? Well, Reach is a measure of that, how many people see a site each day. Just to give you an example, CNN is seen by about 2.23% of the Internet every day. Yahoo Japan is seen by 2.84%. That number is obviously much higher in Japan. That's the most popular website in Japan. Wikipedia is seen now by 6.19% of everyone on the Internet every day. That's a pretty phenomenal number. That puts us at number 9 on the Internet. So more people see Wikipedia each day than CNN and the BBC combined. So I always like to say, when reporters want to ask me some question about the mainstream media, well, now that I have numbers like these, I can say, oh, you mean Wikipedia? Who is mainstream anymore? This shows our growth in traffic over time. We're the blue line there, going up and to the right. And this is mapped against CNN, which is obviously a very popular website. If you look here near the end of 2005, there's this enormous spike upwards. This spike upwards was caused due to an enormous amount of press coverage we got at that time. Apparently, there was an error in Wikipedia. Who knew? Got a huge amount of press coverage over what was actually a very bad error. For a short period of time, so someone came to Wikipedia and they put in some false information. They said about a somewhat prominent but not really, really famous journalist, John Siegenthaler, that he had been briefly suspected of having something to do with the Kennedy assassination. This was completely false. In fact, he was a member of the Kennedy administration. He was a pallbearer at Bobby Kennedy's funeral, a friend of the family. And when he found this in Wikipedia, he was quite upset. He made a phone call. Of course, we had it corrected within 10 minutes, but then he went on to write a really scathing editorial against Wikipedia in USA Today newspaper. And, there was a huge media firestorm about this. They dragged me on to CNN to yell at me. And as you can see, it almost killed us. So, but this does raise what is, in fact, a very valid question, one that we take very seriously, which is how good is Wikipedia? If you follow the news about Wikipedia, you'll see that we've reached a position in the culture where, about once a month now, sometimes more frequently than that, you'll see some news story about a crazy error that was in Wikipedia. I think that part of this is that we've reached a place in the culture where eBay was about maybe 99 or 2000. When there was a whole string of media reports. It was like the lazy reporter's easy story to do. Here's how you write a story. You go on eBay, you search for something weird, and then you write a story about it. So somebody's selling their head, their soul, their baby's head's soul. And then you write a story about this horrible thing that's going on eBay. But after a while, people realize that, you can put any kind of crazy thing up for sale on eBay, and then eBay will delete it. It's really not that exciting, right? And it's the same thing here. We just recently had a big round of news stories about someone vandalized Wikipedia, and they said that the comedian Sinbad had died. This stayed up on the site for 30 minutes and had been pulled down. But there was a huge media sort of response to this. Where we would say, that's not good. We're never happy with that kind of error, but it's not nearly as exciting as people seem to think it is. So how good is Wikipedia? Well, there's been really one academic study so far. This was an article in Nature, which is a very prominent science journal that comes out of England. And they made a comparison. What they did is they took 50 articles of a similar length from Britannica and from Wikipedia. These articles were on scientific and technical topics, and they sent these out to authors who had published in Nature, and they sent it to authors who had some expertise in the area of that article. The idea was to get a bunch of scientists to look at the articles and simply answer the question, how many errors do you find? How many major errors, how many minor errors? And what they found was that Britannica had an average of around 3 errors per article, whereas Wikipedia had an average of around 4 errors per article. So in this case, we were not quite as good as Britannica, but we felt somewhat okay with these results, just because at the time, the media reports were tending to be of the form of, Wikipedia, how dangerous is it? And so it was kind of good to say, look, it's actually not that bad. It's pretty good in parts. We weren't really happy with the results, though, in total. It's not really good enough to suit us. We're always focused on the highest possible quality. And what we said from the beginning is that we want to be Britannica or better quality, and that's what we're trying to achieve. We also felt that this study was a little bit unfair to Britannica in that it focused on scientific and technical topics, which has always been a strength of ours. There are certain kinds of systemic bias in Wikipedia that comes from the fact that the early adopter crowd, the internet geek crowd, the free software crowd, really knows an enormous amount about technology and the hard sciences and maybe isn't so good with some of the other topics. So if you look up information about a Nobel Prize winner in literature in 1933, you may not get nearly as good of an article from us as you would from Britannica. That's changed over time. As we've gotten bigger and bigger and more people have come into the project, we've become much more well-rounded, but you can still find that kind of thing in Wikipedia where if you surf to a more fine arts kind of area, humanities, it won't be nearly as good as it is in some of the areas where we have a lot of strength. So neutrality is a very important principle for Wikipedia, and I had a conversation just a couple of days ago with Larry Lessig, and he told me he was going to be speaking about some questions about attitudes within our movement. And I unfortunately wasn't here this morning, so I didn't get to see his talk. So I hope I'm not repeating anything he said. But I just wanted to say a few words about that topic, based on our conversation, because I thought it was quite interesting and actually quite important. Wikipedia proves that people of wildly divergent viewpoints can work together in harmony. We have people who are working on articles in very controversial areas who are able to come together and over a period of time negotiate compromise presentations that everybody agrees are pretty good. If you take some very controversial subject like abortion, you could have a very reasonable, thoughtful Catholic priest who very much agrees with the Catholic Church's position on abortion. And you can have a very thoughtful, reasonable activist from Planned Parenthood or an organization like that who has a very different view on the subject. But they can come together and say, look, we know we'll never agree on the answer in this case, but we can at least agree to present it in a fair manner. We can treat each other with respect, and we can actually come up with a presentation where people will understand what it is that we're arguing about. This works very well in Wikipedia for the most part, although we are human beings and flame wars do erupt. But the key to it is a commitment to reason and a respect for the context of knowledge of others. It's a commitment to the idea that if you disagree with someone, you should try to talk to them and reason with them about what the disagreement is rather than insult them, attack them, or try to undermine their credibility. In our movement, we're pretty good about this, but I think we still need to draw on this culture of thoughtful toleration. We still have people within this movement, which is dedicated to sharing ideas and sharing knowledge and software, who become very fundamentalist about various points. And I'm not talking about one side or the other. I'm talking about on both sides. We need to have a space for people to be able to disagree safely. If your concern is that if you deviate one square iota, you're going to be crucified, that's a big problem. I used to be a little bit shy about using my Macintosh computer because obviously Apple is quite evil. But I need it, and so I use it, and I've become a little bit unapologetic about it over time. I would like to use free software, but so far I can't, and so that's a real problem. And if somebody disagrees with me about that, that's fine. But you need to have space to disagree safely. You don't need to feel like I'm going to scream at you if I don't agree with you, and I don't need to feel like you're going to scream at me if I don't agree. Monocultures are unsafe. Anytime, this is something that you know from biology, anytime you have an ecosystem where you've got way too many genetically identical plants or animals, you can have an enormous disaster that wipes out the whole thing. I think that same kind of idea holds true for movements. If everybody has to toe exactly the same line, you become unsafe because you can all as a group commit an error and have really no dissenting voices within the community to help sort things out. And so because our entire project is one of love, I think that this is something that we really need to step back sometimes and think about and realize that people who we disagree with within the movement are still trying to achieve the same goals that we are. And we may have some differences of opinion, but we need to be able to talk about them in an atmosphere of safety and respect. So that was what I got on my soapbox about. Now I'll go back to my usual comedy routine. So actually, what I'm going to talk about now is some of the ideas that I have around the design of internet communities. So this is about website design, but even more so, it's about the design of communities. And so I ask people who are facing a problem of design, you're trying to design some kind of social software for people to interact in a social space. And so I ask people to stop first and imagine that you've been given the task of designing a restaurant. So it's a completely blank slate. You're going to design a restaurant from scratch. And so you say to yourself, well, gee, in this restaurant, we're going to be serving steak. And since we're going to be serving steak in our restaurant, the people in the restaurant are going to have access to knives. And, of course, anytime you've got people with knives, they might stab people. So, therefore, we'd better keep them all in cages. We're going to take all of the customers and we're going to lock them in cages because it's the only way that we can be 100% certain that nobody stabs each other. Well, this makes a bad society. This is not how we design our day-to-day lives. We like to have an open society. We like to have a society where people are free to move around. We don't mind sitting in a restaurant with people who have knives because we trust that they're not going to stab us. Now, of course, sometimes people do go crazy and stab people in restaurants. And then we have a tragedy and we have to clean up and so forth. But we've decided quite correctly, I think, that we don't want to build our society around the worst case scenarios. We want to build so that positive people can do positive things. And a lot of times when people set out to design a website or some social software for people to interact on the internet, they actually make this exact mistake. They think of all of the bad things that people might do, and they design everything around those bad cases. I think that's a fundamental mistake in the process of design. The correct way to go about it is to think about how to empower good people to do good things, how to keep things as open and fluid as possible, and then think about, well, gee, sometimes something bad's going to happen, so what do we do to correct that? In a wiki context, what do you do to correct that? Well, if somebody comes in and vandalizes a page, gee, that's really bad. Now what do we do? Well, the wiki answer is you save all the past revisions, so you can just click on the old one and save it, and you can fix it just like that. It's very simple to fix things. There are additional tools like we let anybody edit Wikipedia without even logging in, but if you start misbehaving, the administrators who are elected from the community can block your IP number for 24 hours, which slows you down just a little bit. All of those kinds of tools come from basically trying to hold on to the assumption that the vast majority of people just want to be helpful. They just want to be good. And we have the empirical evidence to back this up. When we look at the anonymous edits to Wikipedia, what we find is that they are, on the whole, good. There are more vandalism from anonymous IP numbers than from people who are logged in, but it's still quite a small rate compared to the rate of good edits. So finally, how should people use Wikipedia? This is something I talk about a lot with college students. I always get every fall, I'll get several emails from students who say, I got a really bad grade on my paper because I used Wikipedia as a source. Can you help me? And I always write back and say, no, you're in college now. You're really not supposed to be citing an encyclopedia. That's pretty junior high school. That's not the way you're supposed to do research. That is, Wikipedia is an excellent starting point. It's edited live. Sometimes people do insert wrong information, of course. We do clean it up pretty quickly. But you should always check a second source, and usually, when we're doing our job right, Wikipedia will tell you where to find that second source. The role of an encyclopedia in the research process is as broad background knowledge. It's to really get you oriented and point you in the right direction. It is not the ending point. And so I think that's quite important. Finally, what does the future hold for free culture? What we're seeing right now is that Creative Commons licenses are becoming hugely popular with the general public. If you look at, for example, Flickr, a photo sharing website that allows people to tag their photos with a Creative Commons license, there are now millions of photographs, millions of objects which are licensed under one of the Creative Commons licenses. Some of these are completely free licenses. Some of them are for, you can use my work for non-commercial purposes, but if you want to use it commercially, you would have to pay me, things like that. But all of this culture of sharing is going on. There are all these things being built up on the Internet. And I think this is providing us with a base layer of raw cultural materials. And this is allowing people to come together to create a culture of sharing and creativity, which is not based on market exchange, but rather on intellectual exchange. We have come over the years to think about our culture as being roughly in two parts. We think about the popular commercial culture, which includes such, cultural masterpieces as Britney Spears' last album. But also a lot of really great stuff, right, comes out of commercial culture. A lot of fantastic movies, a lot of great books are supported by commercial culture, and that's all fine. And then we think of fine arts, which are typically supported not so much by market exchange, but supported by either government subsidies or by charitable subsidies, that sort of thing. Well, this is a third way. This is neither of those things. People are not coming together to work in Wikipedia in order to make money. They're not trying to make a name for themselves or to make money. They're also not there because they're being subsidized by philanthropists or being subsidized by the government. They're there because it's fun to share things. It's fun to have this interaction. What do I get out of it? If I put one of my photos up in Flickr and I put it under a Creative Commons license and someone else reuses it, what do I get out of it? I get the pure intellectual satisfaction of knowing that my work was useful to someone, and hopefully somebody will use my work in a really interesting way that will make me a little bit smarter, make my life a little bit better, or even if I disagree with them, it'll at least give me something interesting to disagree with, right? That's the hope that a lot of people have. It's intellectual exchange rather than market exchange. So people love to talk about decentralization and the power of ordinary people, and so I say, let's do it. Thank you.
Let me start by congratulating you for the good work that you are doing. But then I would like to ask a question. Picking on the Kennedy incident that you are talking about, the Kennedy chap, what measures do you have in place to make sure that people do not put harmful stuff that could land you in trouble? What tools do you have in place so that you could avoid things like malicious falsehood and defamation suits?
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, so the basic mechanisms that are in place are, first of all, there is a feed of recent changes. So all of the changes that go into the website are listed on a recent changes page, which is monitored by literally hundreds of people every day. Some of the monitoring is done actually by bots. It turns out that a lot of types of vandalism are really easy to detect. So people come in and they replace a page this long with a short string of curse words. Those kinds of things can be detected by the community very quickly. We also have personalized watch lists so that if you have a certain subject or an area that you're interested in, you can watch those articles. So then every day when you come in, you can look at just the changes that have been made. This is really important. You don't have to go back and look at every article every day and read the whole thing. You can compare two versions, and whatever has changed is highlighted in red for you. So that makes it really easy for people who have a certain area of interest to monitor that area each day and make sure that nothing has gone too far awry. And then pretty soon we're going to have a new feature in the software which we call stable versions, which is the ability for the community to flag certain versions of the article as being non-vandalized. And in certain high-risk areas, that would be the version of the article that we would always be showing to the general public first. And so if somebody we didn't know who's not from the community comes to one of these heavily vandalized articles, makes a change, they would still be able to edit the article, but their change wouldn't go live until someone who was trusted by the community edited it. And the threshold of trust we know can be quite low because almost everybody's doing good work. It's a very tiny proportion of people who do bad things. So those are some of the kinds of things that we have in place. None of this would work, though, without the culture that's grown up within our community. We've got a huge group of very passionate people who believe in the neutrality policy and who understand that Wikipedia is striving to do something remarkable and good. And those people basically come together and help each other and monitor the website. If it was random atomistic individuals interacting without that kind of community bond, I'm sure it would be complete nonsense.
Did you find that initially there was a peak of vandalism that happened and it's tailed off, or has it become sort of a regularly occurring thing? Or
yeah, so vandalism was with Wikipedia from the very, very beginning. This is something that we've always faced. Craig Newmark, who was the founder of Craigslist, has an interesting thing. He says that I think is basically right, which is that bad people tend to be early adopters. The idea is people say, well, now that Craigslist is getting really popular, what about frauds and scams? And he's like, those people were here from the beginning, right? As we get more popular, more and more regular, ordinary people come in. And so that's been our experience. So the overall rate of vandalism has actually declined over the years. And of course, there's still a lot more vandalism than there used to be just because everything is a lot bigger. And so, in terms of really major vandalism, right, we've always kind of been a little concerned about what will we do. We have to think ahead a little bit about the case where somebody has created some kind of a very advanced vandal bot. It turns out most of the people who want to harm Wikipedia are complete morons. So it's not that hard to outsmart them. Anybody with a grain of sense would say that's a pretty useless waste of my time. This is one of the reasons why, from the very early days, people said, well, aren't you worried that Microsoft will see that this wiki thing is working and then they'll compete with you? And I'm like, yeah, I don't see Microsoft being able to put up a website anybody can edit and that lasting very long, right? Just imagine that, right? But most people kind of like Wikipedia, right? We're not trying to hurt anybody. We've got good motives. So it turns out most people don't really feel like vandalizing Wikipedia. Also, for kind of the juvenile types, it's just not that fun, right? There is this sort of cracker mentality that it's a challenge and it's fun to try to go in and deface the front page of a major website. Well, at Wikipedia, come on, defacing a page, it takes 2 seconds. We say, okay, we clean it up. In fact, normally when people do their first vandalism, one of the typical first responses that you'll get is, thank you for your experiment. Go over here and do that. We're trying to make an encyclopedia here. And we try to make it as little fun for people as possible to fight with us. So we don't consider vandalism to be a major ongoing threat, but it's always going to be with us. It's always a dull roar in the background.
Clearly, Wikipedia is a different publication model. You're speaking, I think, in a kind of scholarly venue here where publication is key for our community. I'm just wondering the kind of process that you're talking about here of peer review, essentially. We're interested in spreading sort of open access publications more because it is the scholarly community that's providing the peer review process voluntarily anyway. And I'm wondering whether you've been hearing about new, more open processes of peer review as a result of what's happening here on Wikipedia.
As a matter of fact, yes. Are you familiar with Public Library of Science, the PLOS journals? So PLOS, Public Library of Science has been for a few years now a publisher of scientific journals which they release under a Creative Commons Attribution license. They come at it from exactly the viewpoint that you put forward, that traditional academic publishing is a bit absurd, the way it works. The authors don't make any money, the reviewers don't make any money, and the end product is sold for very high prices. So it's kind of not that great of a system. But at the same time, the traditional scientific journals do serve a particular function, an editorial function and a quality control function, which is something that is important to the academic world and always should be important. So PLOS has been doing a set of traditional journals and releasing it under a free license. And their basic argument is it's just a change to the funding model. If you look at who's buying the subscriptions, it's the same institutions for the most part as those who are funding the research. And so they're saying, let's move the publication costs over onto the grant side for the research in the first place, so that on the publication side we can make things available freely, that we don't have to have this restriction of scientific knowledge to generate money. This is clearly important to the developing world, where access to the latest scientific journals can be quite difficult because it's quite expensive. But beyond that, I think one of the more exciting and interesting things going on at PLOS is they have the project called PLOS One. And so PLOS One is the idea, it's a website where there is a fairly minimal amount of front-end filtering that goes on, a much lower publication cost to put your paper into PLOS One, and then the community there can review the paper and elevate the things that are considered good to a published status. I'm not really an expert on exactly how PLOS One works. I did meet with them, and I gave them my little restaurant speech when they were talking about the design, which I think they drew some lessons from. The first design they talked to me about was a really paranoid design about what happens if X, Y, and Z bad things happen. And I said, don't design around those. Let's assume that your community of scholars has enough peer pressure within that community to keep people from doing things that are too idiotic. And if they do, just delete them then and kick them out of the system. And I think they listen to that. So I think they've got a fairly open system, but I'm not really an expert on how it works. But I think that moving forward, there is a real possibility for recognizing that the academic community is doing a lot of the heavy lifting already, and the pieces provided by the traditional journals, while valuable, can be replicated by a broader community. And if we eliminate that bottleneck, then we can make all the scientific research available under a Creative Commons license, which is really the way it should be. I mean, I think we could all step back and say, gosh, the results of scientific research should be spread as wide as possible. That's what it means to be a scholar, is to provide knowledge to the world, not provide a proprietary publication for nature or science. So I think we're in a good position moving forward there, but there's no guarantees in that area. I'm not sure we're going to win, but I think we can win.
Most of the information access in Africa is done via cell phone rather than computer, and for the foreseeable future, cell phone expansion is going to dramatically exceed broadband.
Yes.
So obviously from an African perspective, it's important that this type of information be available via SMS or via some type of cell phone download. What's happening in that area? Are you looking at that area?
Yeah, so we're looking at it, but there is a really big problem that I don't know any solution to. Certainly right now, people can access Wikipedia through a cell phone. It's a fairly uncomfortable experience for the most part. But phone interfaces into web pages are getting a lot better all the time. So I believe that in terms of providing a quick interface so people can just type in a concept and get the encyclopedia article back, so in terms of purely consuming the information, I think things are going to be okay in that area. There are some inherent difficulties with a small screen. Some of this stuff we're seeing some people beginning to start think a little more harder about style sheets and things like that to make it more accessible on phones. Even some of the cell phone companies are interested in supporting this kind of thing. There's actually some tension between the companies which manufacture the phones and the carriers. The companies really don't care what you're doing. They just want you to buy a phone. So they want the phone to be as useful as possible. The carriers want to make a nickel off of everything you touch, right? And so they're really have not been so keen in general on giving open access to things. We've had a cell phone company approach me with a fantastic business idea an exclusive Wikipedia thing where people would pay per page view. And I was like, yeah, it's the free encyclopedia. So no, it is in fact free as in beer as well as being free as in speech. So at the same time, even if we're somewhat optimistic that on the cell phone device, Wikipedia and other type resources like that will become more easy to use and readable, this in no way solves what for me is a really more deeper problem. When we talk about Wikipedia and our work in the developing world, we really are interested in empowering people to participate in the conversation. We've never felt like the idea of Wikipedia should be, here you go, developing world, here's something some rich white people made for you. Like, I just don't think that's the right way to think about what Wikipedia should be about in the developing world. It should be more about, look, here is this project, and people who speak English built the English one. People who speak Swahili, we're here to help you, but it's up to you to build it, and we want your participation, and we want to enable, the next billion people who come online to really join the global conversation and not just be consumers of Wikipedia on a cell phone. I have no solution to that because I cannot envision at all any possible means by which it would be comfortable to write an encyclopedia article on a cell phone, although I'm told that in Korea, people are actually writing, one person was writing his dissertation on his cell phone. So, not about his cell phone, mind you, actually on it. So maybe I'm wrong, but I really feel like the true participation and the true potential of Wikipedia can only be realized as people have access to actual keyboards that they can type on. There are a lot of projects in this area. Of course, I think One Laptop Per Child has a presentation here. In India, there's a company called Novatium, which is trying to do a $100 PC in India, which I think is a very promising project. But I think these things will come, but unfortunately, I don't know how to help. So.
Hello. Hi.
Hello.
I would just like to mention that there is a project called MobileEd, where they've developed the technology for a sort of audio Wikipedia. And the idea is you text message a word to a number, and it reads Wikipedia back using human language technologies. And that can be done in multiple languages, and it can be also dealing with multimedia content as well, going backwards and forwards.
Yeah, so I'll just comment quickly. I think that project is fantastic, and I should have mentioned that is a South African project, I believe. I think it's a fantastic project. One of the things that's nice about it is that it can be helpful for people with lower reading skills, and then also just reading on a cell phone is difficult. But it's still, I'm very concerned about this is a read-write culture, right? And we're empowering reading and listening, but helping people to be able to contribute is also important. And then I interrupted you. Was there more? Or it does do that. Well, maybe while I'm here, someone can demonstrate it to me. If you know how to do that, that would be great. Okay. Thank you, everyone.